Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, we're going to be talking about Fedora Workstation 35 right after this. I'll be doing a review of Fedora 35. I will be looking at the beta because the actual release isn't coming for another day or so, but let's talk a little bit about those releases. So Fedora releases a new version of Fedora about every 6 months or so, and they maintain support on each release for up to 13 months. So you don't have to worry about trying to stay as current as possible. You can skip a release. That's what it's all about. So if you don't like something that's in in this particular release, or maybe you just don't see that it's worthwhile to make the change, yeah, they allow you to do that skip. So the release schedules, of course, those are never a certainty. They're always dependent upon how many bugs do I have, whether or not I'm really going to try to, send this out to the field or not. But they do maintain a release schedule at their website. And currently, they showed the release date starting somewhere around October the 19th. They usually give a date range. Then the second possibility would be October the 26th. And the last possibility would be November the 2nd, unless there's something catastrophic that would change their schedule. There was a note that was published yesterday on one of the forums that said, yeah, they're definitely releasing tomorrow, November the 2nd. So, yeah, and that means that Fedora 33 will go end of life at the end of this month. So if you're on Fedora 3, you won't have support after November the 30th. Current status, as I mentioned, it is beta right now. Has been since the end of September. So what are some of the workstation requirements? What do I need to run this thing? And they have changed just a little bit since the last time I reviewed this. First of all, they require a 2 gigahertz processor, but prior to this, it was a 1 gigahertz. 2 gig of memory is still the same, and they have bumped the unallocated disk space requirement from 10 gig to 15. As far as the screen resolution is concerned, yeah, 1024 by 768. And you will find some of the spins even require HD. So, yeah, and that would make sense because you're dealing with, especially in the desktop creator, you would need something like that in order to be able to do video and so forth. So the recommended requirements, however, are 2 gig dual processor and 4 gig of memory. They have bumped the unallocated to 20 gig and again 1024. Graphics hardware hasn't changed. This is the same as it's been for a while now. GMA 9, XX or higher, NVIDIA NV30, and AMD's R3000. Those have been around a while, so yeah, and no change there, as far as I know. Fedora 35 supports x86 64, and they do have ISOs for ARM64. So that would mean you could run this on some of the servers. You could also run it on a Pi and anything else that might have an ARM64 architecture. There's a number of manufacturers that are in the kernel. And speaking of the kernel, they do have support now for 5.14. Most of the changes to 5.14 have been kind of centered around security. There is protected memory now that not even root can access. And that would be used to store keys and sensitive information that you might need to keep around, but yet that would be available to the application and not even to a root user. It is based on GNOME 41, and there are some things in GNOME 41 that you might find of interest. There is some changes to the multitasking support, and I'll cover those when we install it. There's also a new remote desktop client which supports both RDP and VNC connections. So it's just a new client. It's not a new method of connecting to your systems remotely. There is, however, improved NVIDIA support for Wayland. And so in the past, you probably remember we all had to change back to Xorg if we were on NVIDIA drivers. It just didn't behave very well on Wayland, did it? There is also improved third-party application support within FlatHub. I know I've had this criticism too, and I've heard others talk about it. Well, there's just not a lot of applications in FlatHub. Well, they're doing something about that. They're trying to entice more application developers to move over to FlatHub, and I think you'll find that there are quite a few now that have joined up with the FlatHub support. There are spins, and I guess I should stop and explain spins. Spins in Fedora usually mean that it is either a complete distribution or it is an add-on to an existing build. So in the case of desktops, you have spins for KDE, for XFCE, for Mate, and so forth. And also, there's just a ton of those in there. But you also have spins for use case. So if you're in scientific interest, there's a distribution for that. There's one for audio. There's one for desktop publishing, video, and so forth. That is all included in one. And you'll find there's quite a few of them, and it's growing. That the number of spins are growing. Typically, those are called labs, and the labs are supported by the community. Now, there is a new spin. It's called Fedora Kinolite, and Kinolite is a community supported. It is not an official spin, but it basically brings KDE's desktop to Silverblue. So if you're not a fan of GNOME and you like Silverblue, but you just don't want to use GNOME, well, KDE is now available. That still might not be of interest to you, but who knows? There may be additional desktop support down the road. I'm sure there will be. It's just a matter of time. And of course, Silverblue will continue to support GNOME. I haven't seen their specs yet. They generally, they'll add on whatever is in Fedora 35, but they do not, for some reason, at least I can't find it. They do not show a beta on their website. So I'm assuming that there is no beta. I wouldn't swear to that, but I would assume that there isn't. The package maintainers can also, in this version, they can elect to use either GCC or Clang or CLang LLVM as their compilers. And I think they have to justify it. I don't know how strict they are as to whether or not, they do a formal review of that and then authorize them to use that compiler or not. But, like everything else, it's giving them choice, and that's good that they're allowing that. So previously they did not. I mean, it was GCC or the highway, right? Fedora 35 also will utilize DNS over TLS. So if your DNS server has support for TLS and provide access that way, it will support it. And if not, it just falls back to using DNS in the good old-fashioned way of having everything out in the clear. What changed in Fedora 35? I always include Stratus because I'm interested in it. They don't include Stratus because it's still not a production file system. But Stratus, for those of you who don't know, I have a video on it. I'll put a card up above so you can find it. But Stratus is a file system that is modern. It's meant to do all of the things that neither Btrfs or features for, taking snapshots and doing all the modern things that you would expect to see. But it isn't very old. I mean, it hasn't been around very long. I think 2 years in development so far. File systems usually take quite a bit longer than that to make sure that they're not going to blow up, lose data, or basically cause issues in other areas like what happens when you go to restore, can you restore, and that sort of thing. But it takes time to evaluate them and to make sure that they're going to behave in the production world. GCC has been moved to 11.2. Now I included the .1. That could change because that's just a patch release. GNU Make utilities have moved to 4.3. GNU Bin utilities 2.37. Golang 1.16 and LLVM version 13. Perl is bumped up a little bit to 5.34. Python has moved to 5.10 or 3.10, I should say. And Node.js is at 16.11. So if you were coming from Fedora 34, they do update occasionally. So this may not be as big a jump as it was when Fedora 34 came out, but some of those are pretty big jumps. And then, like I said, there's all the list of the Fedora 35 spins. That doesn't include the labs, and we'll talk about those. But yeah, you have KDE, XFCE, Mate Compiz. Cinnamon, LXDE, SOS, and i3 tiling managers, which i3 has been supported for a while now. I think they joined in 34, I think. But the labs are supported by the community, and this is a list of what they actually have currently. So if you're interested in astronomy, there's a set of applications that have been curated for what you might be interested in if you're an astronomer. Comp Neuro is the study of the brain or AI. There are AI components in there as well. Design Suite, which would be desktop publishing, it would be print media, web media, that sort of thing. But is also a video editor and Nearline editor, and I had problems with getting it going. So the issues I ran into it, and you may run into it too, is it is missing a GStream library, and the software says I need a library that supports libav, which is like saying I need a library that supports C++. So that doesn't really tell you much about what's missing. I wish, personally, I wish that developers, if they're going to tell us they're missing something, why don't you go ahead and give us the option to install it? That would be really nice. Games are also in a lab environment. So if you want to just get ahead of the game and get your system set up to be able to play games, you can do that. Jam is for audio, and it allows people who are professionally recording or doing voiceovers to have the necessary software and codecs that you're going to need for that. The Python Classroom is a learning environment, and a lot of these learning environments will have tutorials and labs and things that go along with it. So it's more than just, stand up this lab and you're done. No, you can branch off into a formal study and learn it on your own as you go. There is a security lab, and that does forensics. I don't think it does pen testing, but there is some things in there where it will do checks, rudimentary checks on security of your system. And again, same thing. There is a lab book that goes along with it to get you along your way and learning more about that. Robotics Suite, if you're a hobbyist or a maker and you're interested in building robots, then there are tools in that particular version of Fedora. And then Scientific. I don't know how well it compares with the Fermi Labs version of Linux. Fermi, of course, is gone now, and I don't know how well that is in supplanting it. If those of you who know, let me know in a comment. I'd be interested in hearing from you. Occasionally, I like to play around in that area, but I haven't done so in the last couple of months. So I guess at this point, we should probably go kick the tires on it. I had thought about, standing up one of the labs today, but I don't think that's a good view of Fedora 35. So I'm just going to put up the core environment, and I will be right back. So the first place we should start is at the website to find the particular download that you're interested in. You can see it's still in beta here. So you do have, let me kind of slide this out a little bit and get a little bit more of it on the screen for you. So there is Workstation Server, IoT, and then you'll find CoreOS and Silverblue. CoreOS is a server build that is slimmed down. It's mainly for building containers, so if that's of interest to you and you want to play with it, it's there. Silverblue, of course, is an immutable desktop. They do not have, as far as I know, a server version of it yet because you have that one, the CoreOS. So this is really meant for developing containers, being in a secured environment. Maybe you have, you're worried about, you want to have some additional layers of protection in your system, and Silverblue allows that. It could be protecting you from yourself too, because if you do install libraries a lot, you could blow yourself out of the water with that. And then the spins we talked about and the labs we talked about. There's also some alternative downloads, and those are special purposes or for special architectures. I didn't go into that, but they're in the network installer, and we'll look at that today when we do the install because I'm going to be using that. But for us, all we need really is this. So we'll go to the workstation and download one of these versions. So if you're on Mac or Windows, this makes it easy for you if you're going to put this on hardware to create a USB stick. So if you're on Windows or Mac, you can just download the media writer. It'll ask you which thing you want. It's kind of like the net installer. So it'll ask you, do you want the which spin, or I don't think it has the labs though, but it does have the spins, and it does give you a choice between the workstation and the servers. So yeah, so I'm going to be picking this one right here. If you're on ARM or you want to put this on a Raspberry Pi, you can do that. There's a raw image, which would be probably the way you would do it because this would be the easiest way. Or some of the ARM allows you to actually install, go through the installer. So like the newest Odroids allow that because they're using multi-boot. So I would just click the download. It would download it, and it's about a 3 gig build, something like that. So I'm just going to go over here, and I have a couple of these set up. I did install one of the designs. I am going to go ahead and blow those away, however, and then I'll just go ahead and create a VM while that's working on that one. And we'll just call it, just in case it hasn't fully removed it. I'm going to go out to my NAS, and I have the network installer. Now, if you install from the workstation page, you will actually get the workstation live. And so I went to the alternative and downloaded the network installer, which gives me that one. So, and that just allows me to pick and choose from all of them. If I wanted, I could change this over here. I'm not going to use Spice. Well, I guess I could. Maybe I will. Maybe I should use Spice. I think I will. All right. So, as far as the disk is concerned, we'll put this on local and we'll make it a 32 gig. And let's see. Okay, I'll give it the minimum amount of memory. I am going to move this over to Intel, and then we should be good to go. So go ahead and create the VM. I'll just walk you through the installation options because this is a little bit different probably than what you're used to. So we'll go ahead and start it. Wait for it to give me a signal. Yep, okay. And we'll open this. Okay, so at this point, I can either test it or install it. I've already tested it. I'll just install it, but it isn't a bad idea to do that just to make sure. You also want to verify your key signatures, and they do have a place to do that as well. Since you are downloading an ISO file that could modify your system. And there has been some exploits recently where Linux utilities have had malware in them that have come in from the actual developers. So yeah, not good. Not good. All right, so English and English. Yeah, I know I could blow up the entire world with this pre-release, but so if you're coming in from the workstation, the only options you're going to have is keyboard, time date, and then the installation destination. It will not give you these other things or the user settings, but if you're doing the network release, you get a lot more control over what's going to happen. So it's already figured out that my language is US and my time and date is near Chicago. The installation source is the closed mirror. Now, if there's a mirror that I know of that's closer to me, I can insert that in here if I want. I'm going to leave it alone, and then what software do I want? So this would be like if you wanted to build it up yourself, you didn't want to have all the bloat and all that stuff in it, but you just want to do that. There's also a minimal install. That would, of course, be a server build. There's a Silver Edition, Workstation Edition. Now we're starting to see some of the spins. There's Plasma, XFCE. cinnamon. There's also, now these are probably unsupported that weren't listed on their page. We have sugar, Deepin. There's a development and creative workstation, which is one of the labs. And then you have a web server infrastructure, basic desktop, and the i3 is down there. So whichever one you prefer, you can go to. I'm just going to install the default workstation. And then over here, if there's something else that I might want to add on to that, I can do so. So like here's the Python classroom, there's the robotics lab, there's the security lab. So you can easily add on those features at the time you install. I believe you can also do it after you've installed. If you want to retrofit an existing one, you can as well. I'm pretty sure. Well, we'll check. We can check on that. We'll double check. I could be wrong. I have been in the past once. No, I'm kidding. Network and host name. And then if you want, you can set those right here and their host names down here. So I'm good with that. That looks fine to me. And then root access, which is interesting. This is a little different than it has been in the past. In the past, you had to kind of know that you could, if you didn't do anything, it would disable. Well, now you have a button that explicitly does that. So that's really nice. So that then you know, oh yeah, I am disabling root. Or you're not really disabling root. You're disabling root's ability to log in. So yeah. Okay. So we're going to leave that alone, and I'll go ahead and create a user. So root will be disabled on my system. And then, yeah, since I don't have root, I've got to become the administrator. All right. And should be good to go. So I'll go ahead and begin the installation, and then I'll be back when this is done. It's 1840 right now. And so I'll be back when this is finished. Okay, so it's now about 8 minutes later or so. And just making sure I'm recording. So I'm ready to reboot the system. So that did take quite a while to bring it up. And I noticed there was about 1,600 and some odd packages that were installed. So quite a few, quite a few. This may have some updates, but it won't have as many as the workstation version will. Because, yeah, that's been out longer. But this one is pulling from the nightly. This is pulling from the latest builds. So, oops, let's try the right password, huh? Maybe that'll work. Okay, so the first thing it does is it gives you a chance to take some, and it's kind of really basic. So, I mean, I'll walk through it with you if you want, but yeah, it's not going to really tell you. It allows you to play around with some things like your Windows key. Although I think it should be changed to the Linux key, and then how to search. That's all the same, and then your management of your workspaces and how to do that. There is support for touchpads, so if you are using one, yeah, you can use gestures now. And it shows you how to do that, and that's it. It's kind of really basic. So the first thing I want to do is to get this up so that we can actually see something. So let's go do that first. Let's get this real estate. And then we'll go through a couple of things in here. But let me just get the displays taken care of first. As you can see, I believe that is the, well, no, you could do it 800 by 600. So I might be wrong about the minimum. So looks like you could do it 800 by 600. I don't know how feasible that's going to be in this day, given that the apps are being written for much larger screen sizes. So you may run into some problems with that. Okay, so I've got that. There's also your nightlight controls if you want that. Cursor positioning is a bit off. I just plugged in a monitor, so it's probably confused. There's a hot corner up here at the top, and you can turn that on or off, which you could do before, but I don't think it was this easy. You can also, your active screen edges will allow you to make your views full screen. or they will split the screen. You also have the ability to change your workspaces, how they work, whether they're dynamic, or whether you have a fixed number. You can put your workspaces to display only on a particular display. Now you can still use it from both, but that two up display would only be on the primary, or you can make it on all. And then you can include applications from all workspaces or just from the current one. So that's one of the changes. This one is so in power, you have some power mode settings now. You can go between balanced and power saver. So if you're on a laptop and you're on a battery and you want to get as much use out of that system as you can, then you might want to switch to power saver. I think well, I'm not going to comment because I don't know. I would imagine there's probably some other things you can do automatically. And then they don't show the kernel version either, but they do show you the GNOME version. It is 41, and I am on Wayland. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for updates, and then I'm quickly going to rebuild. Let's check and see. This looks like it's in the 90s somewhere. '93. And this is the normal browser, not the long-term or extended support. Okay, let's go in here. And this is allowing me to turn those on right there in the third-party repos. And that we'll go check on some of this stuff. What I want to do is I want to see how they differentiate between, let's go to transmission, and let's see how they differentiate between flat hubs and, so I thought there was a menu. So maybe this is a bad example. Let me try a different one. That's probably there. Yeah, okay. So in this case, we have a flat pack available as well as the RPM. So you can pick and choose which one you want, and that's a little nicer than I remember. Now, I haven't used 34, so that might be something that was in 34, and I've just forgotten about it. My applications that are installed, what I have out here, probably not a lot other than, some basic stuff. We'll look at all of that. But I was curious about this and how they differentiated between the two. So that's good. We'll go ahead and get out of this. And now I could be using my Windows key to do that. Let's see what we got. We got context, weather, clocks, maps, photos, videos. Those are all standard GNOME things. GNOME text editor, document scanner. Yeah, all boxes is installed by default. This is where you can go and just pick which image you want, and if it's a custom one that you want, you can do that too. It'll just drop you into, okay, find the ISO for it. Or you can have it come down, and then it will ask you to create the live USB stick. So then you'll have a bootable interface. I think it's kind of funny that Windows 11 does not actually have a bootable ISO. So if you go to their website and you go to the download ISO, it's not bootable. So the only way you can get a bootable is if you're on Windows and you can run their utility. Nothing like painting yourself in a corner. Good for them. Yeah, that looks a little old, doesn't it? That's looking a little out of place on some of the stuff that we have. Here we have all this modern stuff, and then we get, wow, back to the 90s. So I would need to install, probably Tweak, which is on my system down here, but I don't think it is installed by default. Look. No, but there's the new remote desktop client. And you can go through a little tutorial on it. Probably doesn't tell you much. Nope. That's nice. So, but it isn't that hard to use. It will just add a connection. What's the name of the remote desktop? Is it RDP or is it VNC? Yeah. And then you would connect. So I'll have to try that down the road and maybe do a separate video on it. I I have a different, I use X2Go, so there's a tour again. There's LibreOffice. That is version 7.2. I already know what that is. And then Rhythmbox if you're playing music. So yeah, it's pretty basic, but I think probably the first thing we need to do is get some, let's get set up here. Let me fix this. I know Neil Fetch will do this for me, but I want to see how many packages are actually installed. 1,628. I don't think HTOP is installed. I know NeoFetch is not. I know Glances is not, and I don't think Git is. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's going to add 38 more. Yep. Now I've been running some stuff, so this is probably going to be high. 1.2 gig, and yes, it is high. I thought GNOME was going down in the memory requirements was going down. This looks like it's going the other way. Going back up. App cache is taking about 1.5 gig. So yeah, it's not horrible. Let's see. Should be able to hit one. There we go. Oh, the other thing that this kernel 5.14, as you can see up there at the top, 514.14-300. The other thing that kernel has in it is core scheduling. And that will be, I assume, to support the latest Intel Core 12. I don't know how well that will work. We'll find out, I guess, November the 4th when Intel releases the Alder Lake processors. So, yeah, we'll find out. Let's take a look. And yeah, I've moved it up to 1666. Okay, let's do our usual. How much disk space are we actually taking? Looks like about 3.5 gig, so quite a bit lower than the base release of Fedora is quite a bit smaller than Ubuntu. So no, Snap is not installed by default. That's good. It's not that I'm, beating on Snap. It's just that I like to have the choice. The other thing we look at is you got to clone Linus in. Third time's the charm. It works every time. All right. So one other thing I noticed this week is, well, I guess it was last week. Linus Tech Tips had him and Luke, I guess, had some kind of challenge going to see if they could stay on Linux for a month, and there would be some kind of terrible punishment if that one of them quit early. But I did notice he also converted over one of his file servers to Linux. Well, technically he moved it over, but he's running TrueNAS, so that would be BSD, but that's okay. When he gets over to Scale, he'll be on Linux, but I don't think they're running on Scale. That would be very dangerous to do that in a shop his size, but hopefully he hasn't done that. So anyway, let's take a look and see what we got here. So just for review, what I usually get on most of the systems right now is about 66 or so. Some are lower, some are a little bit higher, but usually it's at right around 66. So I'm expecting to see about the same. Now, I haven't run Linus on Fedora 35, so I don't know what it will be. I am seeing some suggestions and I'm seeing some red go by. I just use this as a tool to determine how much work it's going to be to harden. I'm not going to go back through that. 69 is the overall score. And then I usually just kind of look through. Probably the largest offender is the firewall. Yeah. Those are always the same. But I don't think they've updated this tool in a while now. They seem to be slowing down on their update. Yeah, 307. Yeah, CISOFY seems to be slowing down a little bit on the updates to the tool. But I suppose it's probably, you have an Apache server. So I guess, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal to me. It's kind of nice to have a little stability. These are all the same as to what tools is suggesting, the syscontrol values. Those have been changing, though. I've noticed that occasionally they have updated, and they're adding more and more of these, which will continue to narrow down your system's focus on what it can do. And probably some of those will probably break some of your apps. So, test it on a VM first. Don't mess with syscontrol on a production system unless you really know what you're doing. Yeah, because you can bring them down. Yeah, and that would not look good on your resume. All right, so I think I'm going to stop there right there. I mean, as I want to spend some more time with Fedora as always. I mean, this is just an initial look. So I want to spend more time with Fedora. I want to put it through its benchmark and compare it to the other ones that I've been running. I just don't have time to do it today. And also, I want to do that on the official release, not on the beta. That's not fair. So yeah, I won't do that. I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you all again soon in the next one. And bye for now.